Hello, everyone, and welcome to the last discussion panel of the Translating Europe Forum 2020. I can feel that your sighs and your disappointment at the end of this event, because it's been a wonderful event, and I think the Translating Europe Forum team fully deserves all our praise and our thanks for brilliant work. In this last panel, we're going to be talking about a topic that I think is on everyone's mind, especially after 3 days of talking about technologies, how to differentiate yourself if you're a linguist in this global translation market. So we'll be talking about teaching technology and what do we need in order to train translation technology experts. My name is Dragoș. I am currently a professor in machine translation and computation terminology at the University of Vienna. Before that, I was at the University of Leeds, and my background is in languages. Then I specialized in translation and interpreting, and then I worked for some time as a technical writer and translator for a telecommunications company. I am joined for this discussion by 4 really exciting panelists who represent both the academic angle and the industry angle, and we will do our very best to answer your questions as well. So we'll be keeping an eye on the chat and the Q&A. I'll do my best to multitask, and at the same time, I would also like to say a word of thank you to the interpreters who are enabling us to reach a wider audience today and to spread the word about the work that all the linguists and professionals contributing to the Translation Europe Forum do, and achieve higher visibility, because constantly throughout the 3 days we've been talking about visibility, about services, about gaining a bit more appreciation for our work from the part of the clients and the global society. So without further ado, I would like to invite our panelists to introduce themselves. So Elizabeth.
Thank you, Dragoș. Okay, so my name is Elizabeth. I'm a business development manager here at XTM International, and I focus on the LSP and academic markets. I'm based in London, UK, and I also volunteer with Women in Localization, UK and globally. I'm involved in sponsorship there. Before that, I was actually in an unrelated field. So my degree is in design, and I guess I fell into the industry by accident. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Next, Joke, please.
Yes, hi, I'm Joke DAEMS. I'm a postdoctoral research assistant at Ghent University in Belgium. My main research focus is into the impact of translation technology on the process, the product, and translators' attitude. And I'm also involved in teaching to a certain degree, mostly in our postgraduate in computer-assisted language mediation, where I'm involved in the classes on teaching machine translation post-editing, among others. So glad to be part of this panel.
Fantastic, thank you. Next, Špela, please.
Hello there, my name is Špela VINTAR. I am professor at the Institute for Translation at the University of Ljubljana, Slovenia, where I teach translation technologies, localization, terminology management, and other technical courses. I've been doing that for over 20 years. I'm also an active researcher in natural language processing, and my main areas are knowledge modeling, semantic technologies, and also machine translation evaluation.
Wonderful. Thank you. Peter, please.
Hi, my name is Peter Reynolds. I am the co-CEO at memoQ. I'm very excited to be here because teaching translation and supporting universities is something that's crucial to us. I think we were the first company to have an active academic program, and we've been given our software free to universities for educational purposes for the last 12 years. So I'm looking forward to hearing your seeing your questions and hearing your comments. Thank you.
Super. Thank you. And thank you all. I think everyone has been spoiled for choice in these past weeks. There's the Translating Europe Forum, which has been a brilliant event. There's been the European Association of Machine Translation that just finished yesterday. They finished their annual conference. Very soon, there will be the Translating on the Computer, the TC42 event. So a lot of events talking in part also about technology. But just in case one or some of our participants, attendees, have been missing these discussions, I propose that we start today's conversation by a simple question, or a short question rather. Why do we even talk about this topic? What's so important about teaching technology, and how do you, from your areas of work and research and expertise, how do you see the future of the technology-enabled linguist? So, for instance, Elizabeth, would you like to start? I think you are muted, and I'm not sure if it's me.
Sorry, no, it was me. Yes, thank you. So with translation technology, I find one of the most important things is to have a holistic view of the whole thing. So look at the bigger picture. Don't just look at one specific area. Understanding the fundamentals of CAT tools. So looking at the flow of content. So you usually have a content source. Maybe it gets put into a translation management system or CAT tool. Then it gets parsed and segmented. There's translation memory, terminology, analysis that goes on. And then it does go into the editing environment, so the CAT tool. As long as new linguists understand the core principles and understand how they can find the pros and cons in different tools, then they'll be set to use that in any sort of technology, whether it be memoQ, XTM, any other tools that are out there. Also, there's quite a few different things going on in the women in localization space as well. So they do run several different events as well with universities to help foster more growth. So to educate students, looking at not just how tools work, but also like project management, exploring specific topics like game localization, machine translation. There's so many different things there. So definitely get involved with other external events as well as university courses.
Thank you. It's this idea that students really need to know the big picture, and also not just students, translators in general, linguists in general, I think is going to be a theme that we will come back to quite a lot today. And it's also a theme that's been mentioned quite a lot in these past few days as well. And thank you for also mentioning the great work that Women in Localization is doing as an association, and their individual chapters in the individual cities and regions. I think it's also an initiative that everyone should appreciate and join. You mentioned a lot of things that are relevant. So technologies for a vast array of tasks and also steps in the process. And I'm also wondering, Peter, in your experience, has technology stayed quite constant, or is there a rapid change? How do you feel about this? How should people be prepared for it?
Firstly, I think technology is just one of the many things that are changing quite rapidly, that students of translation have to be wary about. The industry seems to be becoming much more specialized, and the level of competence of a translator is far higher. My experience of working with universities has been that, 10 or so years ago, the approach of most universities was they liked to say that they knew something about the tools. But at this stage, there's a lot more universities actually using them. And, I think most of the translation technology companies now also give their tools for free to the university. So there's the prospect here of the students getting access to the same tools they would use in a professional setting. The problem that I see, lecturers need to be supported with this. It's often the case that if a lecturer's been working as a translation lecturer for the last 15 years, the whole thing has changed so dramatically that it's not like what happened at the beginning, how it was at the beginning of their work as a lecturer. It's all quite different now. And we have to figure out a way where we as the industry, and not just the translation technology companies, but the rest of the translation industry, need to support these lectures, because it's in all our interests to get the best possible, the most competent students, to get them out of the system and to get them having the best education. And I think there's a problem with lecturers having access for their own training and their own information, and we have to figure out a way to support that.
Wow, that's certainly music to, I'm pretty sure, everyone in the academia. The fact that at least part of the industry is so open to supporting lecturers in upskilling and also introducing some of these new technologies in their training, and I think it is a perfect moment at which to bring in our members of the panel representing the academia. But before I do that, I would also like to remind everyone taking part in this event that you are very welcome. Actually, we really would love you to ask us questions in the Q&A, and then also vote for your favorite questions so that our panelists can also share their opinions about those. So going now to the academia, Joke, how do you feel about the future of the translator, the language specialist, in the context of this changing technology, widening, or at least workflows becoming a bit more explicit and also more complex? Several companies such as memoQ and others that Peter has mentioned being open to help. How do you feel as an academic in the midst of this whirlwind?
Yeah, that's a lot of ground to cover. But yeah, I definitely agree that the profession for our students is definitely changing and becoming more technological, as we've noticed, throughout this conference and some of the other conferences you've mentioned. It's hard to imagine a translator that does not know anything about technology. And on the one hand, you have, the stuff that's conventional, like the CAT tools. When we follow the changes in the industry, it's more and more indeed machine translation, post-editing coming as well. But even beyond that, it's not just translation anymore. It's really, we expect our translators to not just translate. We expect them to be sort of, like the title of this session says, rather like translation technology experts. So we want them to be more than just translators. And I agree with what has been said by Peter, that it's indeed, it's something that is rapidly changing, and you can't just expect, universities to easily pick up on everything that is happening. We are trying, obviously. We have, with the postgraduate that we have specifically in Ghent, we tailor that specifically to language mediation through computer-assisted language mediation. But I do think it's great to see the industry interested in helping us out, because, it would be helpful to have these sort of collaborations, people from the industry giving training to the trainers specifically, so that they can sort of help the next generation of students as well. So it's great to hear these thoughts coming in. Yeah, those are my first thoughts on that, if that is helpful.
Thank you. Perhaps we should also acknowledge that maybe we got slightly carried away with our own marketing and promotion, because yes, we do mention in the title of the session, what do we need to train translation technology experts? But at the same time, I think we should appreciate that universities can only do so much. The university course is only so long. The resources are, depending on where we are, more or less limited. And we're planning on touching on all of these. But before that, Špela, what is your reaction as well? How do you manage to combine all these, I don't know, demands for perhaps more skills, more technological skills? How do you approach this?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that for me, I really welcome this topic at this year's TEF, and I think the reason from the academia's point of view why we need to be talking about translation technology training, of course, we are already doing a lot, and we have been doing a lot for the past, I don't know, decades. But like it has been said already by Joke, also by Peter, what we're doing is not enough, or it could be improved in several ways. I think one thing that is missing, this is perhaps my personal experience at the institute I work at, is a lack of integration. So often we have courses focusing on technology, but technology is rarely experienced as, you know, a part of the translation process per se. So it is not integrated into other courses as much as it could have been. Then I think we also should be more ambitious by including training which is not focused on CAT tools, on traditional tools that are out there now, because simply we are training people who will need to survive or need to, you know, develop their careers in this field for, I don't know, 30, 40 years to come. And I'm pretty sure that they will eventually need skills other than just CAT tools. So I think what we should be definitely focusing more is language resource management, not just in the sense of teaching, I don't know, corpus tools and workbenches, but also showing some NLP tools which are out there and are relatively easy to learn without proper programming skills. So simply, you know, deploying the tools that are out there, becoming not just technology users, but gradually moving towards, you know, experts who can influence the design of translation technologies. That is my ambitious view.
Thank you. And also we should remember that the universities are ideally placed for supporting students to acquire this wide range of soft skills as well as language skills, translation skills, and technical skills. And they should be the place where it is safe. So students feel safe to experiment, but also to fail. At least in my experience, there hasn't been a lot of talk about failing. You know, when you attend some of the industry conferences, perhaps there are a lot of presentations about success stories, but you know, not many people talk about how projects go wrong and how technology breaks down in the middle of a project. So you have to rely on soft skills and lateral thinking and problem solving in order to actually carry out the work. So I think we should appreciate that as well. While we were discussing your views for the future, I have been keeping an eye, as I promised, on the Q&A, and the easiest questions not in the world is this one, and also the most popular one. In your opinion, what is the main topic you think it's important to teach translation or localization courses? I think every one of us, at least in the academia, has certainly spent some sleepless nights thinking about this. But yeah, let's try this a little bit. Joke, would you like to start this time?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's part of the reason why we're here, right? What is the main thing that we need to train the future generation of translators or technology experts? I think it's also a tricky question because in many ways, if you're training a translator, the fundamental thing is still that they have to be able to translate. And on the one hand, you need them to be aware of technology, what is out there, how to use it, how not to use it. But at the same time, it cannot go at the cost of their actual translation skills. Because that's some of the things that we've noticed from reports, is that actually language skills are deteriorating. I'm not sure how that is across Europe, but in our country, that's sort of a big issue that we want to focus more on language skills in the first place and then find a way to add technology to that as well. But I think it's definitely important. The main thing, I guess, is just to have a critical mindset, right? It ties a bit into what Elizabeth has said. You have to understand sort of the basic principles of technology, how to assess which types of technology are right for your needs, when to use it, when not to use it, how to see which types of technology work for what situations. And I think it's really just sort of a general being aware of the risks and benefits of technology that is going to be key as well. Because it's such a rapidly changing field, as has been mentioned. It's impossible to always teach people everything that is state of the art at any given time, but you can sort of give them exercises and have them experiment with certain technologies and have them critically reflect on what works, what doesn't, when to use tools, when not. And I think that is perhaps not a straightforward answer to that question, but that is, to me, the first thing that comes to mind that will be crucial there.
No, I think it's a perfect answer to this question because also it addresses a part of the ecosystems, some people's criticism that certain training courses or certain university courses are moving more towards training rather than education, and so there is a little bit of a debate going on about what should be the point of a university course. Is it higher thinking? Is it clicks to get something done in a particular piece of software? And I think your answer actually combines perfectly both of these approaches, because you reach for the middle ground, the critical thinking, the knowledge of the bigger picture that Elizabeth started talking about, but also the knowledge of such a variety of tools that the students, and if it's a continuous professional development course, the participants actually know which tool to select. Špela was talking that there are quite a lot of natural language processing and NLP tools around these days, but it is still, whoever wants to use them still needs to know what they're for and how they should be used before actually, which buttons to press in order to get something done. Apologies for that. Fantastic. The wonders of the new way of working. That's going to make into the bloopers reel, I'm sure. Elizabeth, what do you think are, from the point of view of the industry, and then I'll also ask Peter, what do you think that we in the universities should be teaching? Is there one thing?
Well, to follow on from what Joke was mentioning, it's quite hard to really find the time, of course, to fit everything in. So I'd say encourage people to ask a lot of questions. Make sure that they can understand the expectations of their client. So maybe having some industry projects, maybe if you can find ways to have some internships, or if that's not possible in some cases, maybe have live projects with some possible end clients or LSPs where you can understand a specific brief. Maybe it's like software localization, or maybe it's game localization, understanding how they want that content to be translated, the expectations of the customer, why it's being localized, looking at the available tech stack, like is this client providing technology or are they expecting linguists to provide their own? Do they have more needs, like Do they want a specific quality type? Do they have a terminology as an example? There's so many different things there. With internships, they may be a bit hard to set up now, but most universities, I believe, have some connections to different companies and can do a few things there. But in any case, with finding internships, if students do find that a bit tricky, then there are going to be other groups where these things can be discussed, like with women in localization, or there are some other networking groups where companies might be actively looking for interns, but maybe haven't published something. So maybe groups like block lunches, or even just reaching out to different professionals could be a way to help there. So perhaps we need some more industry connections with universities that won't take up too much of our lecturers' time. Understandably, they're covering so much content, and it can be a bit of a balancing act to fit everything in that our students need.
Thank you. And certainly I can attest for being the happy beneficiary of such good collaborations with industry partners. Colleagues of mine, me too, we've also taken advantage of programs such as the Erasmus Plus mobility program for educators to visit companies who have been very open with us, sharing their practices, sharing their technologies, and also just providing more resources for us to update our programs, courses, and to essentially make the student experience more useful. So thank you, Elizabeth, for bringing in the topic of internships, because we also have a question on the Q&A, which is currently the most popular one. It was initially addressed to Peter, but I think you've made a brilliant start on it. What are the industry's views on internships? Are they compulsory? Are they necessary? And maybe this would be a thinking task, or a follow-up question rather for Špela perhaps. Can we find alternatives, especially in the current situation, to in-house internships? So first of all, I'm going to go to Peter to ask him about his view on internships, as well as if you want to add to this, that magic, very hot potato of what should be the one thing that the universities should teach.
Okay, I'll start off with what would be the one thing for the universities to teach.
So you know it. Brilliant.
Well, I don't.
We finish early. Oh.
Well, one of the issues that we have is that the translation industry is really diverse and fragmented, and a huge number of professional translators are single-person businesses. And that's really difficult thing to do. To be a successful translator, you have to be a brilliant accountant, a brilliant marketer, a brilliant timekeeper, a brilliant networker. Oh, and by the way, you also have to translate. And the only thing that you'll get from you'll get an inkling that it just involves translation, while in fact it involves millions of other things that any business will do, except that this is a single person business, and it makes that really difficult. The other thing about it is that many professional translators don't start getting regular work until they've got 5 or 6 years experience. We're getting to the stage where translation is becoming much more specialized, and the level of skill required of translators is higher. So it's quite difficult for somebody new starting off, just coming out of a university and thinking they can walk straight into a translation job. Usually it's not like that, and they're not prepared for that. And it should be possible to do, to figure out, for the university to teach them ways to try to get this work, and to also let them understand that you're not going to go into a job where you've got your freelance translation business all set up and you've got 10 regular customers who are competing to get your services and you only pick the nicest jobs. It doesn't happen like that, although you can work to that sort of thing. So one of the things I think on internship with translators is something that I haven't seen, but I think would be a good idea if there was a situation where professional translators, maybe in the major associations like the ITI and the ATA and the BDU, if they adopted a student where they would effectively talk to the student once or twice a week to explain what they do, how they run their business, and help the student set up in their own business. I think that could be a good way of internship. The two people from the industry on this panel are myself and Elizabeth from XTM, and both of us, I know we do internships, but it's internships for developers and people interested in selling software. It's not particularly for people from the translation industry, and I think they got the same problem. But we do come across a lot of translation companies who are very active in supporting the universities through a number of ways. And these companies should be acknowledged and they should be supported. And I think this is a crucial way of bringing the internship, making it good by having somebody from a translation company come into the university regular, maybe having also one or two students have internships within the university. I think that sort of work is excellent and should be acknowledged, and we should also figure out some way where we as a industry praise that sort of work, because there is an awful lot of very small translation companies who effectively put a lot of their own resources into this. And it would be good if they were also supported by some of the bigger companies and also by some of the enterprises who have got translation departments, that it should be possible to take an internship. So I would suggest three things. Firstly, if there was some way for translators to be a mentor for a graduate student who's just starting off their translation business, that would be useful. I think what the smaller translation companies, what many of them are doing in supporting internships is very welcome and should be supported. And it would be good to also see enterprises and larger companies be much more active with internships. So thank you.
Thank you. I think we have some really great news at this point, and I'm very sure that Peter and others will be happy to be reminded that there are occasional pockets of initiative that are leading by example. So, for instance, something that I am aware of. So, apologies to everyone else who's doing the same thing. I'm not, knowingly ignoring you. But I just wanted to mention that I know of an initiative started by Nancy Matisse and then developed within the Translation Commons framework. I know Jeanette Stewart spoke yesterday at TEF, which is exactly what you were mentioning, Peter, the mentorship program, the mentorship guidelines for translators who want to, I like your term, adopt a student. That's so cute. But yeah, essentially, it's really good to have in this conversation the acknowledgement that actually for a student who is an aspiring linguist, you need to be involved in many more things than just your university course. So you need to be looking out for things like women in localization or local chapters of professional associations, mentorships, reaching out to companies as well. So you really need, if you're a student, to be taking this seriously. Your 3 or 4 or however many years of university education that lie ahead of you, I strongly believe that shouldn't be, they're formative, but they should be taken as a job. So you really want to make the most of everyone you come into contact with, as well as reaching out and improving your networks. On that point, because we're talking about internships, the value of all these skills that the students need to acquire and can be acquired through internships, but at the same time, we recognize that we are in a situation where internships are not always possible. Špela, I was wondering, could you share some of your experience on more engaging or in ways of teaching that help bridge all these gaps, or at least some of them?
Yes, thank you. I will in a second, but first I would like to comment on this debate on internships, which is something that I agree with everyone else who was talking about it, that this is an essential component of a good study program. We do have also internships here at the Ljubljana Translation Institutes, but something while I was listening to Peter, and also before that to Joke and Elizabeth, what I think, so we have, the system here works that we have a contract basically, or agreements with about 60 LSPs who then adopt our students and mentor them. But I think perhaps one thing we could improve in the future is that the range of these companies should be broadened, in the sense that we should perhaps also look at companies not offering just traditional translation services, but why wouldn't we send students to internships into companies where, you know, any kind of multilingual content processing is done? So wouldn't it be interesting to see for future language experts, you know, if they are involved in multilingual marketing or multilingual transcreation or even intralingual transcreation projects and stuff like that. So I think perhaps we could just broaden our horizon there. And back to your question, Dragoș, you were asking about good experiences or best practices. In my opinion, another kind of scenario for learning are projects, especially international or inter-university team projects. This is one of the best experiences that I and my students have had in collaboration, organized by you, the host of this panel, while you were still at University of Leeds. I'm sure that other universities also collaborate in this way, but for my students, these projects were basically real-life simulations with very tight deadlines, lots of financial planning, confusing instructions by the clients. Indeed,
on purpose. We have to add, not because we are totally incompetent. Sorry.
Yes. No, but the thing is, those projects were always very technical, but technology was never the focus. It was always just a means to an end. And I think this is the best way. If the question is, you know, what is the best way to teach tech? That is the best way. You have problems to solve, and then you pick the tool that will help you solve your problem. So yeah, that's something that I wanted to point out.
Thank you. Also, I'm wondering, because we in the academia, we are big fans of problem-based learning, and as you mentioned, Špela, the simulations, the team projects are a great source of learning experiences. They're also, we should say, since we're talking about this and we're being honest about this, they're also quite intensive to organize and manage. And yeah, because as an educator, I mentioned that the academia should be a safe place for the students to fail, but also as an educator, you really need to plan and keep an eye very closely on things, because that failure has to be under certain, within certain parameters. things can snowball, and we don't want that. We just want this to be a formative process. So other initiatives that I know of, and again, I'm sure there are many more, there are the International Network of Simulated Translation Bureaus, I think they are affectionately known by this name, which again puts students in different countries together, and as Špela was saying, they get used to working in different currencies with instructions maybe in different languages, with teammates in different time zones, and all kinds of things that can go wrong. We try and gradually build them in these projects. But I'm also wondering, and perhaps Joke would like to contribute on this point. We have to online, and some people were saying in previous days that this is how freelancers actually work, and so it's not maybe such a big deal. But for an educator, it kind of is, isn't it? How do you feel about the changes brought about by this complete move online? How does that fit in with teaching translation technology, or it has had no impact on your practice, for instance?
Yeah, I think it absolutely had an impact. Would it be all right, though, if I first still pick on the internships? Because while Špela was talking, I felt like that's definitely something I just wanted to stress extra, because it's the internships definitely are of benefit to our students. And I just wanted to say, because we have it in our postgraduate, students have to do an internship with companies for a certain few months as part of the program. And that is really something where they put everything they learned to practice. And it's very varied. So it's not just, it can be a translation company, but it doesn't have to be. It does have to be, to some extent, language and technology related, but we've had students, writing regular expressions to clean up data. We've had people actually doing translation, doing quality checks of machine translation. We've had people writing copy because multilingual communication and more into journalism type of communication is also a part of that. And we do notice that the students really need that kind of internship, or they really learn a lot from it. So they always come back with positive experiences, especially if they've had the opportunity to try a variety of skills. So not just translation. Even the people that go in there sort of saying, I want to be a translator, once they've worked for a company and there was more a variety of skills involved, they often return like, oh, maybe actually I want to go into, say, technical writing, or I want to do a mix of both. So they feel sort of more free to do more than just what they initially thought they were going to end up in, so to speak. So it's definitely an enriching and a crucial experience. So I just wanted to add on to that what Špela said.
How about the teaching online? Has that because I'm also doing my best, probably doing it very badly, to keep an eye on the Q&A, and we do have the second most popular question is about some of the challenges in teaching translation technology. So has the current situation impacted your practice at all?
It's a bit mixed. On the one hand, I mean, we now have a lot of opportunities to teach online in suitable settings. I mean, you have video conference options. You can do a lot of work online. You can communicate more flexibly than you could, say, 5 to 10 years ago, obviously. So in that sense, we are lucky to be living in this time. We do see from the students that they really do appreciate it. Back in the time when we were still allowed to teach on campus, that they really sort of enjoy being in a physical room, especially for discussions. That these breakout rooms on Zoom are a good virtual alternative, but we really know that our students do miss having that interaction face-to-face and being able to exchange ideas face-to-face as well. Same for teaching technology. Specifically, sometimes it's just easy when you're troubleshooting that you can physically go to the computer of the student and really just help them sort things out. You can do that in a virtual way, but it's always a little bit more cumbersome than being in the room with the people, basically. So it hasn't been ideal, but I do think that so far the response from the students has been fairly positive, that they seem to like the way that we're handling the situation, and I do feel that they're doing well. But I guess it's challenging for everyone, of course.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And I quite like the way in which this question and the Q&A kind of finishes on, trying to be a little bit, just spice things up. So why not? Come on, it's the last panel. Let's maybe share some gossip, spill some beans, or at least give an honest opinion about this particular point, about the challenge of persuading students, but also teachers, that the tools are indeed important. And I'm wondering, maybe we could start with Elizabeth and Peter from the industry side about your experience persuading or bringing more practitioners from universities to incorporate the tools, and then Špela and Joke, your reactions and your experience as well. So Elizabeth, would you like to start, please?
Sure. I guess the challenges there, I probably see them more as opportunities, and I guess it depends on timing as well. So approaching universities, of course, not a problem, and offering tools is also not a problem. I guess the tricky bit is, where does it fit in with their syllabus? Like, they may have some specific plans, or maybe it's a really technical course and they're focusing on other things as well. So I guess it's just having a really clear line of communication with the teachers and supporting them in what they want to do, and always being ready to answer questions. In some cases, I've gone on site with universities to present to students and have a live Q&A, helping them back then physically, sorting things out on their computers and just working together really collaboratively. It's been quite nice as well to show different possibilities within tools, like we've got connectors to other systems, whether it be for quality or CMSs or other features like that. So yeah, it's just really having a great line of communication with the teachers. I hope that answers the question.
It does. Thank you. And it's also it's very, very useful for the students as well, because at least when Špela and I were working on the team project, I think it's the typical parent scenario. I don't know. I'm not a parent, but I'm guessing, where you as an educator are trying to, or you are presenting a workflow, perhaps a best practice, and it kind of seems to go in, but then when a real person, and I liked how my former students used to call the professionals real people. So when a real people comes and a real person comes in and says more or less the same things, but from a real person's point of view, it's as if the curtains were drawn and the lights shone down, and so yeah. So thank you, and also other companies for continuing your collaboration with universities. And we should, because I'm pretty certain that in our audience we have educators as well, university trainers, lecturers, professors. Don't be afraid to approach your local professional associations. In Europe, we've been very lucky to be also part of the European Masters in Translation, EMT network, in very close contact with members of the EU ATC, also of GALA on a global scale, of ELIA. Apologies for all these acronyms, but useful homework for everyone to go and look them up, because such collaborations exist. Peter has already mentioned, and also Elizabeth, the willingness of quite a lot of companies to provide software and educational programs. So, the barrier to entry, at least in my experience, has been lowered quite a lot. Špela, would you like to add to this?
Yes, I just think that a word of thanks would be appropriate at this point, something that I forgot to say earlier. When the COVID pandemic started in spring, we had extremely good experiences with memoQ, a slightly less good experience, but still positive with SDL, in terms of reaction to the sudden situation where we had to provide licenses to large numbers of students. And I must say that I was really impressed and grateful for the quick and prompt support offered.
Well, that's thank you, and I add my thanks to yours. And let's bring Peter in because we were also going to hear from him. And here he is.
I'm not sure what you're asking me. We took the COVID. Obviously,
we were talking about the industry's perspective on persuading lecturers to adopt technology in their courses.
Yeah. Okay. I'd firstly say this: the technology is probably not the most important thing that you get out of a third level education in translation. It should be the skills to equip you with life, because the technology is going to change over lifetime of somebody who has graduated today. Over the next, if they're going to be working for another 40 years, you can be guaranteed that technology is going to change, and going to change quite dramatically, because it has changed dramatically over the last 40 years. So the skills they have should be the skills to be able to adapt with that, to be able to adapt to a changing workplace, to be able to use the technology, and to be able to make sure they use the technology rather than the technology uses them. With things like the COVID crisis, we took that as an opportunity as well as being a horrible thing to happen to everybody. And we did contact our partners and suggested to them that this, we knew that they were going to want to move to virtual classrooms. So we made it very easy for them to give licenses to their translators. And this is something that our view is that the more access that the students have to technology, the better. If they're intimidated by the technology, or if they regard it as complicated or difficult to use, then when they start in the workplace, it will be difficult. And even if the technology changes, that'll just be another, just add confusion. So the more access they have to it, the better. We try to encourage lecturers to allow their students to have our software on their home computers, and sometimes lecturers have come back to me and said, but the student may just go and translate for money for that, and it's not going to be the end of the world if a student gets enough money so that they can buy a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever, a present or something like that. I think that's a good thing, and it's not going to it's not going to cause us any particular problem. We'll have a customer for life in that sort of situation. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the original question.
We were talking about encouraging lecturers to bring in technology, but to be honest, I really think that a very important point that you've made so far is this, that we shouldn't necessarily focus on the technology itself, but rather on the problem-solving skills, which marries perfectly with the mission of a university. So in a world of transient technology or ever-improving technology, the problem-solving skills are the ones that actually will remain. But can I come back to you also, because I know that you are an advocate of going beyond technology, going beyond skills, and also incorporating in training industry standards. So far, we haven't mentioned them, and I think they should be mentioned as part of any serious program. So, Peter, would you like to share your thoughts on their relevance, and why should any trainer care about the ISO standards, for instance? I think it's quite an important topic. But that said, I've got a vested interest. I've been involved with standards for for about 20 years. I was one of the group of people that first started work on what became XLIF. I was also the project editor for ISO 17100.
And the ISO 17100 is a good example of an important standard that I suspect many academics don't quite know what it is. One of the things that confuses people is they've got this view of ISO having one standard, and that's ISO 9001, which is a standard that's basically about continually improving your process. But the ISO 17100 is a product standard where the product is a translation that's delivered to a certain standard. There's a couple of things with this product. One is that the translators are suitably qualified, and two is that it's been translated and then completely revised by a qualified translator. And that makes it a product standard in that this is a product that you would like to sell. And many translation companies that are positioning themselves as dealing with particular niches focus on this standard to highlight how their services differentiates from some of their competitors. And it's important that students know what this is. You know, for example, some of the biggest translation companies in the world use this standard when they're dealing with life science translation. There are other translation companies that are quite a lot smaller that say that all their translation is done through the standard, and they probably specialize in life sciences or government or banking or so on. But it is important that people know the standards that are out there. And my feeling is that at the moment, there is some confusion over this. And many of the comments that I've heard from lecturers indicates that they don't quite know what these particular standards do and what they're trying to do. And it would be good to have better support and better education for the lecturers. If there's one thing I would say today more than anything else, it's that we as an industry should figure out a better way to support lecturers and to support the people teaching, because it's not easy, and we should figure out a way how we can support them better and how we can make sure they've got the skills to teach and they know the issues that are out there with the translation industry of today. And I think there is a problem with that at the present.
Thank you. That's a very important point, and well made. And also, to add to your comments about the standards, in my experience, even reading the standard helps with clarifying terminology, and the students are starting to talk. For instance, they learn the difference between revision and review, and then you don't get to situations where someone's talking about proofreading when they want to actually say revision. And so the standards are a very helpful starting point to harmonize some of the competing conversations that are going on. I totally agree. So we've been talking for about an hour, and I hope that all our attendees are reassured that, first of all, the universities are willing and able and have been doing really good work in teaching translation technologies. The industry is willing and able and has been lowering the entry barrier into acquiring such tools and adopting, I will keep using that, adopting a student occasionally as well. There are mentorship programs. There's a big community of support that is around. So I hope that even the more skeptical of our audience is now a little bit reassured that things are happening in universities. And on that point, I remember that in the previous round of the EMT programs, the network, when we were a much smaller community, we ran a survey of which technologies were taught by which universities in our network. And actually, to our surprise, but it shouldn't have been surprising, it was to be expected, 44 programs were represented in that survey, and we had 138, so 138 tools and tool versions which were taught across the MT network. Of course, they weren't all taught in a single university, but there is work which is happening, and there is a lot of energy and enthusiasm as well. So I hope people are persuaded of that, which brings us to the most popular question in the Q&A so far, and also an opportunity to share some and talk a bit perhaps in more detail about some of the projects that have been going on, some of the resources that have been created. So the question is, what books or websites would you recommend for students, maybe also professionals who want to upskill, who want to learn more about CAT tools, machine translation, project management, etc., etc. Špela, would you like to start, and then I'll move to Joke?
Yes, I've been looking at that question too.
It's been there for a while. I haven't been ignoring it. I've just been waiting for the right moment, at least in my head.
Exactly. No, cool. And I just remembered that it's exactly 3 years ago, I was presenting the DigiLink project also here at TEF 217. So the DigiLink project was an Erasmus Plus funded project, which first of all tried to define a new graduate profile, the skills and competencies of what we call the digital linguist. And it also designed 7 full online courses covering different aspects of translation technologies, including localization, machine translation and post-editing, text processing. There is terminology management and mining. There's also an introductory course on programming in Python. So you are invited to take a look at learn.digilink.eu. And now, since I'm already talking about the project, back then I was kind of trying to explain the range of interdisciplinary skills we believe, and according to the survey among employers that we've performed, so the range of interdisciplinary skills that future digital linguists should have. And I'm happy to say that now this idea has actually developed into a full joint master's program that we are launching next year together with the University of Zagreb and University of Brno. So we see the digital linguist as a kind of alternative profile to a translation technology expert, as someone who, apart from the language and translation skills, also has some skills in natural language processing, in data analytics, but also an understanding of digital media, the legal and ethical aspects of the digital media. So that is perhaps something you wanted me to mention, Dragoș.
Perfect, thank you. Telepathy worked fantastically. Joke, do you have some favorite resources which you use in your courses? Because I am aware that in your university the BA is slightly different from the AMA setup. How do you approach? What kind of resources would you recommend?
Yeah, that's a pretty big question. There's so many resources out there, obviously. Yeah, so some of the things specifically maybe for machine translation post-editing, if people are interested in that, I remember that being part of the question. There is the course by TAUS. They have this course online on machine translation post-editing, which is a really good introduction sort of on the basics of machine translation post-editing, with also some exercises. I do think it costs a little bit of money to participate, but it's good to get a sort of first idea, and it's been some inspiration for our classes as well. And if I can make some self-promotion, we also have a YouTube channel of our research group, Language and Translation Technology, or LT3 Research on YouTube, and we're trying to make some videos that are also being used in our classes where we explain some basic concepts of machine translation, but also file formats and stuff like that. I do think that at the moment they're in Dutch, so we might have to do some subtitling at some point and translate them. But yeah, that might be interesting as well. And for people interested in the differences between translation, between revision and post-editing, there's just a new book that came out precisely on that topic, which was edited by Marit Koppel and Brian Mossop and Isabelle Robert. So it's also a really interesting book because those lines seem to be blurring a bit. So that's really where, it's from the research perspective more, but they really get into, are there still differences? What are the differences? And that might be a relevant perspective here as well. So I
think it's very fresh. I think it's come out last month.
Yeah. It's also a bit of self-promotion because I have an article in it, but I genuinely enjoy reading the rest of the contributions as well. So I think it could be a good sort of point for people interested in those differences as well.
I find nothing wrong with a bit of self-promotion in this panel because you're all doing things for the community. So it's only right that, and I think that's why 106 people connected, let's use the exact figure, on the platform, and who knows how many online as well. So thank you for sharing these resources. Elizabeth and Peter, do you also have any suggestions for resources that students, lecturers, professionals could use? So Elizabeth, would you like to start?
Yes, of course. Yeah, kind of in line with what Jukka was saying, I'd also suggest looking at platforms like Translation Commons. They have several amazing resources, and they have a really easy to use website that anyone can really go to and learn more about tools, technologies, processes. Yeah, looking at those things, and I guess also looking at maybe gaps in CVs. Maybe if you've got translators or linguists that are looking to become maybe a subject matter expert in something, they could look at platforms like Coursera and then study there and pay the fee at the end for the certificates. There's so many different things online, and of course there are several free options as well. I found that simply just searching online comes up with lots of different resources. That's pretty much it on my side.
Perfect, thank you. And I'm very happy that you brought up the magic S word again, the specialization word, because I know we are talking about translation technology, but as everyone has mentioned in the panel so far, the linguist of the future is not just one person who knows some software. They have to have a really broad knowledge, and if they want to be a translator, Chris Durbin has been talking about this alongside many other translators for a long time. Specialization is the key to achieving their goal. Peter, anything that you would like to add to the list of useful resources?
Yeah, I think there's a huge amount of useful resources. Professor Andy Way in DCU in Dublin seems to have been lucky enough to get some of the most brilliant students in the world, and he seems to have his name included with an awful lot of papers that they've written. So if you do a search for papers written by him, you will find some quite incredible things. And another academic that I think has got brilliant ideas, particularly around quality, is Anthony Pym. And just search for those people and search for papers they've written, and you'll find quite a lot. You mentioned a minute ago Chris Durbin. She, I think it's about 20 years ago, wrote a book called The Prosperous Translator, which many of her colleagues treat almost as the Bible. Certainly their aim is to be a prosperous translator. So it's a beautifully titled book and well worth looking at. The thing that I personally read more closely than anything else is Jo Setch's newsletter that covers a huge variety of topics, and it covers a phenomenal amount of issues, including sometimes he just talks about a particular character that he thinks is so nice. I really enjoy reading his material, and I like his attitude and his humour, and I like what he's contributed to our industry. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Something else, since we're talking about humor and a variety of contributors from our industry, another resource that I know my students appreciate is the Globally Speaking podcast, where, in 30 minutes you hear from a really wide range of professionals in the language services industry. And I also appreciate that perhaps our audience has been a bit bombarded by a variety of acronyms. So let's just add some more to those. So you heard about TAUS. Joke was mentioning TAUS, the Translation Automation User Society, and their reports. So that's definitely useful. DigiLink, the DigiLink project you've heard about. Translation Commons, apart from the page listing a wide range of available resources, they also host the Ecolo projects. So Ecolore is one of the projects that started the Ecolo range, was started by Professor Tony Hartley in Leeds, and it has quite plain, simple English, but also in other languages, information about these technologies, what they're meant to do, and also training resources if you want to get started with them. Another acronym, perhaps the interpreters will be more interested in this one, is ORCIT, Online Resources for Conference Interpreting Training. Again, online resource. This was a project initiated by Dr. Svetlana Karsten at the University of Leeds. Apologies that my examples are so Leeds-centered. I can't help it. And these resources, again, are multilingual and interactive, so you might find them useful. But as all of our panelists have said so far, the community, and we heard it in the previous days as well, the community is large, the community is very supportive. So I'm quite confident that if anyone wants to start with technologies or seeks advice about joining the industry, they will find it without too much trouble. I'm looking at the clock, and we have just clock. Wow, that's a word you don't often use anymore. So I'm looking at the time, and I see that we only have 3 minutes left. Do we have any takeaways, perhaps? Maybe this would be something that we could leave our audience with. And also, apologies from me for not taking all your questions, but I think most of them in the Q&A have been answered to some degree in our discussions. Any takeaways, Špela?
I personally, from this discussion, what I would kind of wish for is simply more collaboration, essentially more collaboration both with university partners, with companies, with other interested parties, in the sense of organizing joint student projects of any kind. So they can either be traditional translation/localization projects, or perhaps more ambitious projects developing MT solutions or other language services and so on. This is something that I personally would be extremely open to. Otherwise, I think that many interesting resources, but there is one comment in our Q&A area which I particularly like. Somebody said that it is essential to mix translation experts and tech experts. So translation students with tech students, when it comes to translation technology, they will both benefit from that experience. This is an opinion that I completely share. And this is also the kinds of experiences that we would like to create for students.
Perfect. So another call for interdisciplinarity, which, to be honest, is being reflected in quite a lot of the resources that we have shared so far. Any other thoughts, Elizabeth?
Yes. I agree with Špela there. So definitely having an open mind, being ready for change, owning processes, and just keep communicating well. Teachers that we've always got our tool provider support. So if anything does come up, do feel free to reach out. Always ready to help where possible, and hoping for a really great future, especially with how things have changed so much from the current climate.
Perfect. Thank you. Joke, what do you tell your students to enthuse them?
Ooh, that's a different question from any.
Sorry, let's go back to the initial one. Let's just have a take.
No, it's all right. I mean, I think the main thing is that that the industry is indeed changing, and we're just trying to prepare our students for such a changing world. And I think, in line with what's been discussed, is that that's not necessarily something to be afraid of, but it is something that we try to prepare them for. And I think the main thing indeed is allowing them to learn from a variety of teachers, from people from the industry, having them come in contact not just with translation itself, but all the technology around it. And that sort of echoes what has been said in the chat, that it would be good to have this interaction between translation tech people and more linguistic backgrounded translators, I'd say. So yeah, I think that sort of sums everything up.
Yeah, it's always interesting when you put these slightly different backgrounds together. The conversations are always very interesting. Peter, any takeaway from your side?
I think this industry is quite an open and interesting industry, and I think there's a lot of openness to the ideas that lecturers and students have, and they should just reach out and talk to people out there. We're certainly very open to working with universities, so we work with about 400 of them all over the world, and it's, to my mind, a very interesting and rewarding experience, but it's quite unusual in that the difference between, say, a university in California to a university in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, they can have very different approaches and be at a very different stage of the process. And what I would like is if there was more cooperation between universities, and what DMT doing is very welcome, but it'd be good if they could figure out a way to better improve the support and education for the teachers involved.
Thank you. Thank you all for all your thoughts and for the final call for actions. I'm very sure that members of the audience will get involved in the community, and we will continue to be active in the community. So I realized that we have had so much fun that we've slightly gone over the time. So I apologize to anyone inconvenienced by this, but I'm very, very thankful to all our panelists, to Elizabeth, to Joke, to Špela, and to Peter. I'm also very grateful to our interpreters who have been keeping up with my really bad jokes and with the very sensible point made by our panelists. And with thanks to the TEF organizers for a brilliant event, and to all of you for taking part and contributing, I will sign off, and I'm looking forward to continuing to interact with all of you in the coming days and years and decades. Thank you and goodbye.